Daf. We are in the last phases of Sha'ar base in the Nefesh HaHaim. We have begun chapter 16. I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer here before we start these last three chapters. I've gone through them, and I learned the Nefesh HaHaim a number of times, and I heard shiurim on it from my Rebbeim a long, long time ago, and it made a huge impact on me. I mean, to me, I call it the manifesto of, let's say, Yeshiva Judaism or Litvish Judaism or something like that. Reb Chaim Volozhiner is really spelling it out, how we see the world, and it's very esoteric, of course. It's very Kabbalistic, but it's the Vilna Gaon's Torah. And so this is really, in my opinion, the backbone of what's really going on in the minds of the Rosh Yeshiva and the Manhigim of the Yeshiva world. So it's very central and powerful, and it's difficult text. Obviously, there's a real lot of quotations of Zohar and this and that and the other thing. But he often does come back and tell us what to do and somehow connect it to our life and the way we actually daven and learn Torah and so forth. And 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 we've talked about it recently about picturing letters and as we say the words of davening and so forth, and that's really meaningful for me, and I do try to practice this as much as possible. We're getting to he's going to say stuff now that I feel it's above my pay grade. I'm not really there, so we'll learn it together and we'll try and get whatever we get from it. I have a few ideas I can share, and I have some really good notes from Rabbi, I always forget his name, from Avinoam Frankel, from Frankel. So I'm just telling you that this is very, very high stuff, and some of it's a little bit esoteric even for us. It's at the we have to stand on our tippy toes to understand it. So here we go. We talked already about the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, and how that corresponds to the letters, the dots, and the trop. So that's what we're reviewing. Ki yadua shenefesh ha'adam bichlala hi klula migimel bechinois pratim v'heim nefesh ruach neshama. It's called Noran. Shehem atzmam hagimel bechinois ma'ase dibur b'mechshava. So there's a number of parallels here, which is really, it's helpful, and it helps you understand how things are interconnected and so forth. The world of action, the world of speech, and the world of thought. And those correspond to our nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Shezeh kol adam, and that is everything we do. It's either something we're doing, it's something we're saying, or it's something we're thinking. Those are the only things that really exist for us. V'gam bechol teva, and so this is not just in speech, word, and thought. No, I should have said deed, word, and thought. And it's not only in our soul, but it's also in the letters, the words of the davening. Gam bechol teva yesh gimel bechinas ma'ase dibor machshava naran vehem oisiois nekuros v'ta'amim sheba. It's the letter itself, it's the vocalization, the vowelization, and it's the ta'amim. And I found here, Rabbi Frankel says a good thing. He says he used the words accents. The word accent denotes cantillation. And I recall Jay Pupko said, there's not really cantillation in the davening, which is correct. But he's talking, the Nefesh HaHaim is really talking about the words from the Psukim. Each word of scriptures is assigned Masoretic notes, which determine how that word is to be sung and pronounced when read from a scroll in public. Reb Chaim is not referring to scriptural text here, but rather to words of prayer, which do not have formally assigned Masoretic cantillation notes. He is therefore referring to the intonation used to guide the meaning of the words of prayer. So that's already interpretation. I think he's right. And now he gives an example, and then I'll give my example. His example is, if intoned with a question, the word yes can really mean no. Okay, so I said yes, and I mean no. When I first came home from yeshiva, after my first year in yeshiva, I was 19, and I was rethinking everything I had ever been taught. And there's a certain place in Cleveland, I was driving in the summer, and I don't know why, but there's this certain, it's a side street, and the stop sign at the side street has two big red stop signs, one above the other. Okay, so it says stop and then it says stop again. I don't know why. But when I got home from yeshiva, I saw it, and this is how I read it. Stop. Stop? And so when I saw it, I drove right through because it was telling me not to stop because there was two stop signs there. So that meant don't stop. So I'm just saying that intonation is really important, and it matters how you interpret the words. So apparently that's what Chaim Volozhin is talking about, that intonation, the cantillation, the trop, the ta'amim, the flavor of the words are very important. And of course, we all understand that punctuation, is very important, and intonation. And so that's part of the meaning that's contained in words and letters and their intonation. And he quotes a Zohar for that. Nishmasim, he says that the tamim, inu nishmasim, they correspond to the neshama. And the nekudim, the dots, the vocalization, are the ruach. And the oisiois are the nefesh, kol echad, beshorsho, etc. Okay, so again, we have a beautiful parallel between the human persona, which is nefesh, ruach, neshama, and the letters, the vowels, and the trop. Okay. The ha'oisiois are bechinas maisa. The think of big block letters. The script that we use is called Ksav Ashuris, like it's written in the Sefer Torah, and the letters have a certain bulkiness about them. They're sort of big and bulky, and they're like, it's like a thing. It's like a body. It's like something that you do. The letters. Ha'oisios hem bechinas maisa. Ki metzius ha'oisios gereda below nekudot. If you just have a letter and you don't have any dots, you can't say it. You need dots to say a letter. I efshar shiyu elo bechinas maisa hainu maisa ksiva. You could write them, but you can't say them. You need dots to say them. K'moshe hayu ksuvim b'sefer Torah below nekudos. Ki bedibur I efshar lohoitzi miapeh im lo yedei tziruf hanekudos aleihem. To say a base, you have to say b, ba, bo, bu. You need a vowel. But just the b, that's not, it's zelo dibur. So it's just a maisa. L'cheina oisius levad below nekudos nikroim bechinas nefesh. And again, that's with the tagin. Shu bechinas maisa kiyodua. So again, the nefesh goes with action, and that corresponds to the letters. V'nekudos, the vowels, the nekudos heim bechinas ruach shelahem. That's the spirit. It's the movement. It's the connection. Kanal she'nekudos ba'im ima oisiois al yedei adibur shel adam shu bechinas haruach. The ruach is always the bridge between the neshama, which is very high in the heavens. It's cheluk melokam imal. It's part of the divinity, as it were. And then the nefesh is down here, and the ruach is the bridge between them. That's the mensch is really the ruach. It's what he talks about. He has a body and he has a mind, but I can't really see your mind. And your body, to be honest, doesn't interest me that much. But the reason you're my friends and what I like about you is the things we talk about. Okay? So like, I really know you through your speech. How do I know you? Because I give you a slap on the back or because I give you a hug? That happens once in a great while. But most of our interaction with other human beings is through speech. And speech corresponds with the ruach. So the Iker Madregas Ha'adam is really not the nefesh, like we'll eat together. Okay, we'll eat together, but that's sort of low and shafel. And it's not we'll get together and we'll think together. We'll meditate, we'll sit there in silence and you think your thoughts and I'll think my thoughts. That's also not much of a get together. But let's get together to talk. And that's communion. That's intercourse, okay? We're going to interact through speech. And I'm going to listen to your words and you're going to listen to my words and we'll respond and it'll go back and forth and be really interesting and we'll like each other. So the ruach is really Iker Ha'adam because his nefesh is below him and his neshama is above him. So where we really interact with other people is right about through here, right? Our mouth, our nose, we need some breathing going on. But this is really the mensch, because the other stuff is either too low or too high. So the ruach is really the ikar. And so the vowels, and in Hebrew you have this so clearly. In English, our consonants, our vowels are all in the same alphabet. But in Hebrew, and again, if we're we're all expats, we're all living in Israel, but we're not really Israelis or Hebrew speakers. It's a second language for us. For us to be able to read Hebrew without dots, we see that the same word can mean, lots of different things depending on what dots you put in it. I'll throw one out. Mem shin hey. Well, is that Moshe? There's a pasuk in the Torah where it means miseh.
Miseh.
Exactly, miseh. So, how can you know? Do they mean miseh from the sheep, or is it Moses? Now in English, if I said from the sheep, Moses, that has nothing to do with it. How could you confuse between the sheep and the Moses? But in Hebrew, those are the exact same oisiois. The body is the same. The nefesh is the same. Only the ruach is different. So you see how important the ruach is in Lashon Kodesh in determining the meaning of something. And that's what goes on when we give life to the words of the davening or of the Torah, and we speak it out. Shebetzet mimenu haruach, k'mo she'ikar chiyus ha'adam al yedei bechinos haruach shebo. A person's life and life force, although it's of course involves neshama, ruach, and nefesh, but the ikar chiyus ha'adam is bechinos haruach. When a person, after me'eve esrim, shebetzet mimenu haruach umet, right, a living body, even if he's not breathing. Okay, so he's dead. So that's interesting, because hadam hu nefesh, and we know that even rigor mortis, right, and the person could move a little bit after they're dead. So there's some nefesh still in him when he's dead, but once the ruach is gone, he's dead. So the ruach is really ikar chiyus adam. Kain ikar chiyus tenuos oisiois heima nekudois. So again, the vowels in Lashon Kodesh are really central and key. Shebiltam efshar lehoitzia oisios mi'apeh. Without the vowel, you don't know how to say the word. K'mo shekaseh b'kol makom b'tikunim hamaskilim elo ilin nekudin yazhiru denehirin ba'asfan. They're giving light to the letters. I mean, that's the letters are, of course, we say shachar al gabi lavan. It's black on white. The parchment is white or beige, and the letters are written in black ink. So the letters, we could say they're sort of dark. What illuminates the darkness of the letters? It's when you breathe life into them by speaking them out. So that's like putting a ruach into a nefesh. And so when we're saying the words of prayer, when we're learning words of Torah, we are illuminating and giving chiyus to a nefesh. So that's a very beautiful pe'ula, and it's happening within ourselves on the corresponding levels of our ruach and nefesh are using the vowels and the letters to create this action and this life. We're giving life to the letters. That's actually very, very beautiful metaphor, and something that really happens when we learn and when we daven. And so the highest level then is the neshama v'hatamim shalatevois hem b'chinas hamachshava v'kavanas halev. So we're saying words, we're saying letters and vowels which create words, but how do we say them? With what intent do we say them? In what rhythm and rhyme do we say them? Shehu b'chinas haneshama kiyadua. That's what's coming from our mind. Ki heim tnuois ve'anhagas hanekudois ve'oisiois v'netiatam le'ezet sad shu davar talui b'machshava b'sechel. So again, it says they're melodies, and again, intonation is a good word for it. The intonation that you say something makes a really big difference. You could say the same thing, but if you shout it, or if you ask it, or if you whisper it, those all mean different things. And so that's how you express the letters and vowels that you say. He brings a quote now from Azor Chadash about Toirei Zahav. Inin Tnue de Tami. The Turei Zahav, it's from Shir Shirim, the melodies of the trumpet, the golden turtle doves, Turei Zahav, okay? Inun Tnua de Tami, Banin de Inun Asin Meresha de Malka Lemev Daite V'Sichlasanu Le Asvan Kulua. Ein Sham Od Be'inyan. They originate in the head of the king to impart knowledge and insight to all the letters. Okay, so again, this is typical where Chaim Volozhiner is bringing a quote from the Holy Zohar that the Tamim come from a really high place, from the Rosh Malka, the head of the king, and so also by us they correspond to the neshama, which is in the brain, in the mind. Tnua de Tami de Inun Tikuna v'Shlimu B'Daita Lemin de Yedia Kulo Mitlaneon B'Hokmas of Esachlasana Tnua de Iu Shlimu de Kola on Inun B'Barnash the Razada L'Gosachlasanu Mena. Okay. Kulo Ihu Minda V'Sachlasanu. So whether they're standing, whether they're walking, all of it is knowledge and insight. V'lachein nikraim ta'amim. So that's why these are called ta'amim. Kamo shehatam ve'aperush shel kol inyan כשהוא השכל הנסתר שבעניין, שמתוכו יוכל אדם להבינו במחשבתו. We understand facts, like I could tell you a fact, the temperature is this or that, or I could, but the way we really understand things is bina lahavin davar mitoch davar, and understanding the reasoning behind things. That's really the greatness of the mind of man, and how, science, which is the applied reason, is able to achieve the wonders that it's achieved. And the way we really learn the Torah and understand the Torah is through reasoning. So ta'amim, the Hebrew word ta'am, which means, of course, also flavor and taste, but it also means reason, ta'am adavar, ta'amei hamitzvah. So ta'amim are the reasoning within something, and they're hidden, and they relate to our thoughts and to our neshama. So that's a high level of things. Steve, is it a little quieter on the northern front? Are we okay? You're muted, so I can't hear your report. Okay.
Steve, you have to unmute.
It's okay.
Polite till the end. I could have left my microphone off and I died in another part of the house.
That's a shame.
We've had a lot of rockets lately. They come out at night. I'm not sure they ever catch them. And then you hear a lot of noise of the IDF retaliating if necessary. But I think it's such small scale stuff. I think it's more like a hit and run, in my opinion.
Crazy.
We also have weird things. We have like a battalion set up by the cemetery across the road from Hitzman. So we have a whole big army camp over there, and a few others along the way in the southern Golan. Anyway, why don't we? I'm here to learn.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Glad that you made it back to the screen.
Ask me what really makes me nervous. It's like visiting any Israeli city or going to America.
As long as
I can take it here.
Yeah, as long as you're in Hispy and you feel comfortable at home, that's good.
And I have a start. I have had I think I won't get into it, but I think I was traumatized since birth, almost literally. And I startle at anything. I'm like sitting here, there's a blast. A few weeks ago, we heard this giant explosion coming from our roof, and our neighbors came running over. And it was something with the water heater. We noticed that because water was coming out. Okay. And it turned out to be not much of anything. The guy came, it was Friday afternoon, and he came and fixed it. And 400 shekels. That's it.
Okay.
You could spend that in a Makolit easily. Okay, carry on. Where are you holding here?
We're holding here in the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama of ourselves and of our prayer. And so in the text of the prayer, the letters are the Nefesh, or they're even the body. And the movement, the Ruach, is in the vowels, and the Tam, the reasoning, is in the intonation, which is the Ta'amim. So you have these three aspects in ourselves and in our prayer, and that's what we're talking about. He's quoting now from the Zohar here and there. Mana de nekudin iu nefesh, nishmisa I keser akulu, umana kisrin de inun tame tnuin de nekudin ve'asvan ve'it tali b'machshavta, ve'nekudin tali be'amira, ve'asvan be'asiya. Okay, I see why he brought this passage from the Zohar. At the end, you see what the point he's been trying to make, which is that the tamim are in the machshava. The nekudim, the dots, the vocalization corresponds to speech, and the letters are be'asiya. Okay, and so we talked about what is the asiya. I have two interpretations. One is, he said already, the writing of the letters. Letters without vowels can't really be spoken, and so the only thing you have is this black ink on the page, which was the act of writing. The act of reading is not much of an act because it's just something you see with your eyes. So I mean, there is something happening, but it's mostly internal. But there's another act, and that is the act of speech. And there's a real lot in the Sefer Yetzirah about the way we produce the sounds of the letters. And there's these 5 different groups. And the one that I think the most corresponds to Olam HaMaisa are in English, there's actually a word called the plosives. And it's the letters which are produced by the lips.
The P's. The P's.
B, P, M, okay, and F.
There's explosives, there's implosives.
Yeah, right. So, like, to say the word B, I got to move my lips. I can't say a B, without moving my lips. There's other letters that come from the teeth and the tongue and the garon, etc. So there's some movement of, muscles and places in the mouth really for everything that you utter. But the lips are almost an external organ. And so to say a bass, you're mamish moving your lips. And the Gemara has that expression that akimas sfasav have maisa. The question of, if a person, let's say, curses, or a person is moitzi shemra, there's a lot of isurim in the Torah that are based on dibur. And the question is, we don't give malchus. The Torah doesn't give a malchus for a lav she'ein bo maisa. If the prohibition does not involve an act, it only involves forbidden speech, so not clear that a person is eligible to get malchus. But Reish Lakish says, akimas fasav have maisa, that the movement of the lips, meaning speech, is itself, in a certain respect, an act. And so we're learning here about the act of prayer and how the act of prayer is occurring on these 3 levels of deed, speech, and thought. And that's contained again with the letters, the vowels, and the intonation that we are saying our prayers and learning Torah. V'lachein ha'oived ha'amiti. So if we really want to, be an all-star and really serve God with great intensity and on a high level, b'kavana ritzuya, sincere worshiper, yichaven lishpoich, v'ledavek yachad betfilaso, kol hagimel bechinois, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, asher nafsho klula behem. So to tell you that I really, really do this or know how to do this, I can't really say that. We do it sort of automatically. We use, action, and we use ruach, and we use our thoughts. So in a sense, we're doing it. But more than that, of how to really activate my nefesh, ruach, and neshama, I don't want to pretend that I really know how to do that. Shebe'ez shemoitzi mipiv kol teva me'atfila. Sheyesh ba kol hagimel bechinois nara nefesh ruach neshama be'oisioiseho v'nekudoiseha v'te'amea. So that is how we do this. Yisatzem b'toyhar libo. So strengthen yourself in your heart. Be'oitzem achuka lekasher ledavek al yada mimata lamala beseder madregois nafsho beruchoi berucho benishmasoi V'yis'al kulam l'shoyresh oisa hateva be'oilamois ha'oyonim. So he's saying a beautiful idea that there's this scaling of you're climbing the ladder to the heavens by using your nefesh, and your nefesh is connected to your ruach, and your ruach is connected to your neshama, and the neshama is a chelik melokami mal. So as you bring the letters and you enunciate them and you put thought into them, you're rising up on this stairs, on this sulam, that like the angels were going oilim v'yordim bo. That's really prayer is like that. Angels ascending and descending on the sulam of Yaakov Avinu. And that's a very, very meaningful act which connects heaven and earth. And that's part of the power of our prayer service and standing in prayer. When Yaakov Avinu saw that vision of the Sulam, Sheroisha b'Shamayim, and it's Magia Arza, and it says, Malachei Elokim oilim v'yordim bo. So what does it mean, bo? Bo is the Hebrew word beis vav, meaning in it, or through it, or via it. And so bo, what bo? So the simple interpretation is bo besulam. The angels are oilim v'yordim besulam, in the ladder that he's envisioning. But the commentators, and probably it's a Zohar Kadosh, say when it says oilim v'yordim bo, it means beYaakov, the man himself. The angels are ascending and descending through Yaakov himself, Yaakov Avinu. And that's true of all of us, really, when we're praying, that we're connecting to these letters and these vowels and the cantillation, the trop, the intonation of the words. And we are ascending from the Olam Asiya, where we live, the world of action. We come and we put our feet together and we stand like an angel in prayer, and we use our breath to enunciate these words, and they ascend on high. And the angels and the spirituality are ascending, and there's stuff coming down. There's action happening. We can't see it with our eyes. It's an invisible, spiritual, transcendental transaction where things are happening between heavens and earth, and it's happening within our own persona. It's happening to me and through me, and it's affecting the whole world. It's bringing peace to Israel and Parnasa and Refuah and all the things we need through the words of our prayer. And when you break it down, it's the words, the letters, and the cantillation, the ta'amim. So it's sort of dramatic, what's happening here. It's just that it's invisible to the naked eye. You have to be a maimin and to appreciate the depth of what's going on. V'zewa inyan sha'amru inun de eitzbun sechel ishtamoide betzalusa echsalka be'asven v'nukudi betami asher koyach behem lamod behechel hamelech be'amida detzlusa klile mikol tami v'nukudi ve'asvan. So this is what it means in these quotes from the Zohar, that you have to be on a high level to appreciate what's going on. Let me see how he says it. Okay. And the wise are those who have the wisdom to know how to pray, how to raise up the letters, vowels, and accents. They have the strength to stand in the sanctuary of God, standing in prayer, including all the components, the accents, the vowels, and the letters. Okay. Let's see what we got.
Has any of your training along the way touched on how to do anything remotely like that?
So my answer to that is yes, is that in saying the prayer, in calming your body, when you come to begin the Shemona Esrei, we're mostly talking about Shemona Esrei, right?
Yeah.
And taking a deep breath, and then approaching the words one by one, and thinking even about the letters within the word as you say them. So you are, giving attention to this act of standing in prayer and uttering these words with correct, intonation and the right vowels. And so you're doing what he says. You may not have patience to daven the whole davening like that, right? We don't always have time for that. And I think that's okay. And we learned in a previous chapter, we said, B'chol nafshechem, it could be with all of your nefesh or any of your nefesh, according to circumstances. But if you ask me, how does one, relate to this at all? That's my answer, by going, carefully step by step through the words of the prayer.
Well, as Hebrew being I can't even call it my second language, probably my third or fourth after Spanish and Latin, I can't keep up with the average service here. I mean, I'm scrambling.
Yeah, right.
So if the rabbi's there, in the room, they'll take a little longer on the Shemona Esrei and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they might actually read the whole psalm. It's not always.
Yeah.
So I'm just okay. Anyway,
sometimes, sometimes you're by yourself, you daven a mincha by yourself or Ma'ariv or whatever it is.
yeah, I
and then
do
you have,
all the time.
yeah, so then you have an opportunity to go at your own pace and to use it as a more of a meditative experience. So that's an opportunity. Okay, I'm going to go on because there's just 2 more chapters left of this Sha'ar about this topic. And as I said, it's very esoteric. And then Sha'ar Gimel has good things in store for us that will come to Bez Hashem in the coming weeks. So meanwhile, we'll start Perek Yud Zayin. Omnam od yesh lelo kamilin lifnei ha'oived Elokim b'kedusha. There's still more here. B'vchinas yoiser pratis, more specific. V'hu b'chinas shoyresh haneshama. Another word for that is nishmasa lenishmasa, hanizkar bezohar, v'nikras chaya. Okay, so a little bit of terminology here. We've been talking the past few chapters about naran, nefesh, ruach, neshama. But the truth is there's another 2 levels higher than that, and it's sometimes called narnechi, nefesh, ruach, neshama, and then there's 2 more, what are called the chaya and the yechida. And those are 2 higher levels yet of the human soul. So really there's 5 parts to the human soul, and this is really found in the Midrash and in all the Sifrei Kabbalah. So there's really, if someone asks you, the human soul, there's really 5 parts. But the neshama is already just hovering above us with just some sparkles of light dripping down into our brain. So the Chai and the Yechida are essentially out of our reach. They're called the soul of the soul. They're like within the neshama, okay? So look what he says. He says, Adam harishon, he siga, ulebechinat hayechida hanichlelit ba, sod oilam Adam kadma. Okay, so a little more terminology here. Adam harishon, we often focus a lot about his fall and what happened afterwards. But if we think for a few moments about how great he was before the fall, the way God created him in his own image, so he was a giant of spirituality. And in order to help us think about that, I want to remind you that when it says in the Torah that God made for them kasnos or, after the Chet, there's a way to understand that as meaning God at that point made for them skin. Prior to that, they didn't have skin. So how could you be a person without skin? So on one level, they had something like tziporin, they had like fingernail, they were covered in some different substance, whatever.
Semi-transparent. Like,
yes, they're more like holograms, okay? Like a person as a hologram, okay? In other words, creatures of light, much less physical, much less opaque, much lighter, okay? So much more spiritual and less material. That's how Adam and Chava were before the Chet. They were primarily spiritual with just a little bit of physicality. And so when they were on that really high level, the way they were created as creatures of light, before it was Kasnos or with an ayin, it was Kasnos or with an aleph. They were enrobed in robes of light. And at that time, the soul of Adam Arishon contains not only Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Chaya, but even the Yechida, the highest element of, the highest element of the soul, which is a person's individuality and his personal connection to the Creator, which of course God breathed into Adam, but it was contained within Adam's person. Because again, he wasn't so physical. He was mostly a being of light. So here then he gives another term and sort of a place in a chart where you would put this. I think we're all familiar with the four oilamos of the oilam asiya, the oilam hayitzira, the oilam habriya, and the oilam atzilus, okay? Which is the oilam atzilus is already a world of divinity above the bria, so it's before the base of Bereshis. Bereshis bara, atzilus is above that, but there's something higher than the oilam atzilus, and that's called like the oilam of Adam Kadmon, which is a funny term, Adam Kadmon, because it corresponds sort of to prehistoric man, which is, a scientific term. But this is not talking about Cro-Magnon or anything like that. This is talking about sort of the divine Godhead, the divine image in the heavens, which is somehow corresponds to Tzuras HaAdam, but it's a very, very high spirituality above even Oilam Hatzilus, okay? And so when we're now relating to 5 parts of the human soul, again, the Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, the Chaya, and the Yechida, and those relate to these 5 worlds. So the Nefesh, Adam Hu Nefesh, the blood, that corresponds to Oilam Asiya. And the Ruach corresponds to Oilam Hayetzira. And the Neshama corresponds to Oilam Habriya. And the Neshama of the Neshama, which is the Chaya, corresponds to Oilam Atzilus. And the Yechida corresponds to Adam Kadmon, which is like God's conception. I'm going to create man in a future emanation, very, very early on in the mind of God, when he's just conceiving of what will the world be like, before the blueprints even, just like the vaguest idea of how I will create a creation in my own image. That's called
That's
Adam
past
Kadmon.
history. That's past history. That doesn't
It still
exist.
exists. It does exist, Shem, and it still exists. It's spirituality, and so it's eternal. It hasn't stopped existing. Okay, it's eternal. So it's definitely still here. Just like the Oilam Atzilus is here, so too Adam Kadmon is still here. And the mitzvahs sort of correspond to stuff in Adam Kadmon. Like it would be easy to say that tefillin corresponds to the arm, because we do it on our own arm and we're in the image of God. And so there's languages like that in the Zohar, that the mitzvahs are like Evrei de Malka. The mitzvahs are like limbs of the Creator. And so again, there's this divine Godhead image of Adam Kadmon. And the Nefesh HaChaim is, although he's not explaining what it is, he's using the term. And he's saying really, wonderful, really high stuff, beautiful ideas about the soul of the soul and the Chaya and the Yechida, and that they're hard for us to really fathom or feel or sense or be aware of, but we know they're there, they're within our neshama. The last person who really had them as part of himself was Adam HaRishon. And so we have a lot of work to do to fix everything that was broken, right? Adam and Chava were thrown out of the Garden of Eden, and they descended many, many levels of spirituality into the very physical reality that we all know today. But there's still what to hope for, and there's what to work on and what to aspire to in the world of spirituality, because we still do have a soul that is comprised of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida.
So
those
that's the primordial, that's like the first, that level was the first to exist, Kilo?
Yeah. Everything, it comes down in order. So it came down from the Yechida through the Chaya, through the Neshama, through the Ruach, into the Nefesh. So yeah, there's movement all the time. There's energy going back and forth. I'll just finish then with one last sentence or two about it. We've talked before about the metaphor of the glass blower. And the glass blower is blowing his ruach into the tube, and the tube into the molten glass at the end is the vessel. And we said that the tube is the ruach, the vessel is the nefesh, and the breath of the glass blower is the neshama. but now we have two higher levels. And so I once saw it, Arya Kaplan speaks out, what are these two higher levels, the Chaya and the Yechida? So he says, the Chaya is the glass blower himself, okay? So again, which is like, the mashal is of God being the glass blower and blowing from his breath into the tube, into the vessel. So what's the Yechida? And he
His
says,
thought to create it.
it's Kaviyachol, the soul of God. Okay, again, whatever that means. But again, it's a beautiful mashal of a glass blower that has a soul or a will or desire to create something. There's himself, there's his breath, there's a conduit, a vehicle, and then there's a receptacle. And all that is stuff that I can grasp and think about and embody and act out in the prayer service. I can stand there in shul and still my body and turn on my mind and say words with my lips and my teeth and my tongue and put breath through it. And I'm somehow connecting to this very, very high place that from my feet up through my body and my mind and the air that's leaving my mouth, and I'm sending energy on high, and these angels are oilim v'yordim bo. So I guess it does have meaning for me, and I'm happy that I was able to share with you tonight. So thanks everybody for being here. Steve, you should have shalom and a good night's sleep and quiet in the Golan, and we need a lot of siyata d'shmaya.
Yeah.
Shkoach,
We,
Yeshua.
Baruchim
the
tihyu.
dog was in with us, and the